The door wasn't even locked. Josie pushed it open with her suitcase still in her hand, and there was her fiancé sitting up in bed with her own sister wrapped in her sheets, saying the words that would replay in her head for the rest of her life. "It's not what it looks like, Rosie," Bennett started, and Josie's twin, still tangled in the blanket, cut him off with something worse. "He was going to marry the wrong sister anyway," Vanna said, not even flinching. "I was just fixing it." Josie stood in the doorway of the apartment she'd paid half the rent on for 3 years, a week before her own wedding, and felt something in her chest go very quiet and very cold. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just smiled, the kind of smile that should have scared both of them a lot more than it did, and said, "Good, because you're both going to want to hear what I've got planned for Saturday. Let's back up 6 months to the airport, because that's where all of this actually started." Josie had taken a contract job overseas, 6 months in Singapore, doing systems integration for a logistics firm that was paying her almost triple her normal salary. It was the kind of opportunity you don't turn down, even 3 months before your wedding, even when your fiancé's face falls a little when you tell him. 6 months is a long time, Bennett had said, standing in their kitchen with his arms crossed. "It's $96,000, Ben. We can put a down payment on a house with that. We can have the wedding we actually want instead of the one we can afford." He'd come around eventually. He always did. Bennett was steady like that. A physical therapist, easygoing, the kind of man who remembered your coffee order and your mother's birthday. Josie had loved that about him for 4 years. Reliable, uncomplicated, safe. Her sister Vanna was the opposite in almost every way, except the face. Identical twins, same dark hair, same laugh that startled strangers because it sounded exactly alike coming out of 2 different mouths, but where Josie built things, Vanna burned through them. 3 jobs in 2 years. A string of boyfriends who all seemed to end in the same shouting match. Vanna had crashed on Josie's couch more times than either of them could count, and every single time Josie had let her back in, because that's what you do for your twin. That's what you do for the person who came into the world holding your hand. So when Josie left for Singapore, she asked Bennett to look out for her sister a little. Check in, make sure she wasn't spiraling. "She's having a rough time," Josie told him at the airport, her carry-on already through security, her flight boarding in 40 minutes. "Just text her sometimes. Let her know she's not alone." Bennett had smiled and kissed her forehead. "Of course, go build us a house, Rosie." It was a nickname only he used, short for Rosalind, her middle name, the one she'd told him in confidence on their second date, because she hated it and never let anyone else say it. It would matter later. It would matter a lot. The first month, everything was normal. Josie called Bennett every few days, the 11-hour time difference turning most of their conversations into groggy, half-awake voice notes instead of real calls. She texted her sister, too, sent her pictures of the skyline from her apartment window, asked how she was doing. The replies got shorter, vaguer. "I'm fine. Work's fine. Talk to Ben. He's sweet. Don't worry about me." Josie didn't think much of it. She had a project launching, 12-hour days, a boss who called her at 2 in the morning her time because he'd forgotten what time zone she was in. She was tired in a way that made everything back home feel very far away and very manageable, like a story happening to someone else. That was the gap her sister needed. What Josie didn't know, what she wouldn't find out until much later, pieced together from screenshots and a burner phone number that took a private investigator 4 days to trace, was that Vanna had bought a second phone the week after Josie left. Prepaid, cash, a number nobody had. She'd started texting Bennett from it under the name Rosie's Backup, a joke, she told him, in case my main phone dies overseas and I need to reach you. Bennett, trusting and a little lonely with his fiancée on the other side of the world, hadn't questioned it. Why would he? It made sense. Josie was always losing chargers, always complaining about spotty hotel Wi-Fi, except the messages from Rosie's Backup weren't from Josie at all. They started small. "Hey, just checking on you, missing you today." Sweet, generic, easy to mistake for the real thing. But Vanna had 4 years of second-hand knowledge about this relationship. Every story Josie had ever told her, every inside joke, every fight and makeup, all of it filed away and ready to use. She knew Bennett hated when people chewed with their mouths open. She knew he'd lost his father young and got quiet around Father's Day. She knew the nickname Rosie, and she used it every single time. By month 2, Bennett was texting the burner number more than he was texting Josie's actual phone. "It's just easier," he told his sister Marcy, when she noticed him always on his phone at Sunday dinner. Marcy would later tell Josie she'd thought it was sweet at the time, a man missing his fiancé. She had no idea she was watching an affair get built one lonely text at a time. The real turning point came in month 3 during a video call that should have been between Josie and Bennett and instead became something else entirely. Josie had scheduled a call for a Sunday morning her time, which was Saturday night for Bennett. She'd had a brutal week, a server migration that had gone sideways, 16-hour days back to back, and she fell asleep before the call, her phone buzzing uselessly on the nightstand while Bennett waited on the other end. Vanna, staying at Bennett's apartment that weekend under the excuse of helping him clean out the garage, saw the call come in on his laptop, propped open on the kitchen counter. She saw Josie's contact photo. She saw Bennett in the next room and made a decision that would define the next 3 months of all their lives. She answered it. "Hey, babe. Sorry, bad signal earlier," she said, angling the laptop so the kitchen light caught her wrong, so the pixelation did the rest of the work. She'd pulled her hair back the way Josie always wore it for work calls. She'd practiced the voice, not hard given they'd been mistaken for each other their whole lives, but she softened it, slowed it down the way Josie did when she was tired. Bennett walked in mid-sentence and stopped in the doorway. "Rosie?" he said, confused for exactly 2 seconds before the video quality and the exhaustion and the desperate human instinct to believe the person you love is who they say they are did the rest. "Hey, you," Vanna said, and smiled Josie's smile. They talked for 11 minutes. Vanna kept it short, blamed a headache, said she needed to sleep. But it was enough. It was proof, to herself if no one else, that she could do it. That she could become her sister well enough to fool the man about to marry her. The real Josie called back 4 hours later, apologizing for falling asleep, and Bennett said, "It's fine, we already talked, remember?" And Josie laughed and said, "Ben, I literally just woke up," and there was a strange little pause on his end that neither of them named out loud. That was the first crack. It wouldn't be the last. Over the next 6 weeks, the calls got stranger. Bennett would reference conversations Josie didn't remember having. He'd mention things she was supposed to have said, an opinion about wedding flowers she'd never given, a complaint about her Singapore roommate she'd never made because she didn't have a roommate. Small stuff. Easy to write off as exhaustion, jet lag, a bad connection on his end. "Did I tell you the peonies are getting swapped for ranunculus?" he asked her once. "I don't think I ever picked peonies," Josie said slowly. "You did. We talked about it 2 weeks ago." "Ben, I don't even know what a ranunculus looks like." He'd laughed it off. "You've had a lot on your plate. Don't worry about it." But Josie did worry about it. She started keeping a mental list, small inconsistencies stacking up like loose bricks. A comment about a restaurant she'd never been to that Bennett swore they'd discussed. A joke referencing her childhood dog that had died 2 years before they even met. A story only her sister would know, not something Josie had ever told him. She started calling home more, trying to read her twin, and the answers got cagier every time. "I've just been busy. Ben and I hang out sometimes. Is that weird?" "You're being paranoid, Josie." Being told she was paranoid should have been the reassurance. Instead, it did the opposite. Josie had spent her whole life reading her twin's tells, the slight pause before a lie, the way her voice climbed half an octave when she was hiding something. She heard all of it now, 4,000 miles away, and she couldn't do a single thing about it except listen. The breaking point came in month 5, 6 weeks before the wedding. Josie was on a call with Bennett, late at night his time, and she heard it, faint in the background, a voice she'd know anywhere because it sounded exactly like her own. A laugh, unmistakable, drifting from another room in what was supposed to be an empty apartment. "Who's that?" Josie asked, keeping her voice level. A pause, too long. "Just the TV," Bennett said. "Ben, I know what my own sister's laugh sounds like." "She stopped by to drop off the wedding invitations. They finally came in," he said too fast, the words tripping over each other. She's helping me organize them by table. You know how she is. She just barges in. Josie said okay. She said it lightly, easily, the way you say something when you've already decided you don't believe a word of it. She hung up and sat on the edge of her bed in her tiny Singapore apartment, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly overhead, and made a decision that had been building for weeks without her fully admitting it to herself. She opened her laptop and searched for flights home. There was one that could get her back 9 days early, landing exactly 1 week before the wedding, the week everyone assumed she'd still be finishing up her contract on the other side of the world. She didn't tell anyone. Not Bennett. Not her mother, who was handling half the wedding logistics from 3 states away. Not Marcy, who was Bennett's sister anyway. Not hers to confide in. Her person for this was Farron. A friend from college she'd stayed close with for over a decade, steady and sharp, a paralegal with a habit of thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. Josie called her from the airport in Singapore 40 minutes before boarding. "I think Bennett's cheating on me," she said, no preamble, "and I think it's with my sister." Farron didn't gasp, didn't ask her to repeat it. She just said, "Okay, what do you need me to do?" That was the kind of friend she was. "I need you to help me figure out how to prove it quietly before I get there." They spent the 11-hour flight. Well, Josie spent it. Farron spent the hours on the ground, piecing together what they could. Farron dug up the wedding vendor group chat, still active, where Vanna had posted a photo 2 weeks earlier helping Bennett taste cake samples, captioned like she was just being a supportive sister. Except in the photo, she was wearing Josie's cardigan. The one Josie kept at Bennett's apartment for cold nights. The one with the small burn mark on the left cuff from a candle incident 3 Christmases ago. A mark nobody outside the family would recognize. Farron sent her the screenshot mid-flight through the spotty in-flight Wi-Fi with the caption, "Landed on something. You're not crazy." By the time Josie's plane touched down, she wasn't operating on hurt anymore. She was operating on strategy. She didn't go to Bennett's apartment first. She went to Farron's place, dropped her suitcase, and the 2 of them sat at the kitchen table for 3 hours going through everything. The vendor photos, the odd texts Bennett had sent referencing conversations she'd never had, the burner number Farron managed to trace back through a mutual contact who worked in telecom and owed her a favor. Josie sat with her laptop open, methodically screenshotting every piece of evidence into a single folder, her hands steady in a way that surprised even her. "You're being very calm about this," Farron said carefully. "I'm not calm," Josie said. "I'm just not going to hand them the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. Not yet." She thought about calling Bennett right then, driving straight to his apartment, screaming, ending it in some private, forgettable fight in a parking lot. But something in her, the same instinct that had built a career out of finding where systems broke and fixing them quietly before anyone noticed, told her that wasn't enough. Not for what they'd done. Not for 6 months of being replaced in her own life by the person who was supposed to love her the most. "There's a rehearsal dinner in 5 days, Josie said slowly. "Everyone's going to be there. His parents, my mother, half our wedding party, all the vendors we're paying for." Farron looked at her. "You're not thinking of just showing up to that." "I'm thinking of showing up to that with proof." She waited. She didn't storm anything yet. She let Bennett believe she was still overseas, texting him lightly, keeping her voice normal on their calls, watching him lie to her face, well, lie to her voice, while she quietly built her case. It was the hardest 4 days of her life, hearing him say, "Can't wait to see you," knowing exactly what he'd been doing while she was gone. Then, 2 days before the rehearsal dinner, she drove to the apartment they shared, using the spare key she still had, wanting one more piece of proof before she pulled the trigger on everything. And that's how she ended up in the doorway that morning, suitcase in hand, catching them exactly the way you'd catch 2 people who'd stopped being careful because they thought they'd already won. "It's not what it looks like, Rosie," Bennett said, scrambling for the sheet, for words, for anything. "Don't call me that," Josie said quietly. That was never hers to borrow. Vanna sat up, unbothered in a way that told Josie this wasn't the first time she'd rehearsed this exact confrontation in her head and decided she'd win it. You weren't here, she said. For 6 months you weren't here. I was. Someone had to be. You had a burner phone. You answered his video calls pretending to be me. That's not being there. That's a con. He fell for me, she shot back, sharper now. Not the idea of you. Me. Maybe that tells you something. Josie almost laughed. Almost. He fell for a woman doing an impression of his fiancé for 3 months. That's not a love story. That's identity theft with a wedding registry. Bennett found his voice, finally pale and useless. Josie, I swear I didn't know at first. The video call, the texts, I thought it was you, I swear to God. And when you found out it wasn't? Josie asked. Because you knew, Ben. You knew for at least 6 weeks. I heard her laugh through the phone and you lied to my face about it. He didn't answer that. There wasn't an answer that helped him. Josie looked at both of them for a long moment, her fiancé, her twin, the 2 people she'd trusted more than anyone else on earth, and felt the last soft, hopeful part of herself go quiet. I'm not going to scream at you, she said. I'm not going to cry in this apartment and give you the scene you're probably expecting. I've got somewhere to be Saturday. So do you both. She turned and walked out, and behind her, she heard Vanna say something to Bennett she didn't quite catch, didn't need to catch. She already had 11 minutes of audio from a hidden recorder she'd slipped into her jacket pocket before she'd ever opened that door. She wasn't planning on missing a single word of it. The rehearsal dinner was held at a restaurant with a private back room, the kind with exposed brick and string lights that Bennett's mother had picked out specifically because it photographed well. 40 people, both families, the wedding party, a toast schedule printed on cardstock at every seat. Bennett had no idea Josie knew everything. He thought, because Vanna had convinced him, because she'd spent 3 days managing him like a project, that Josie's cold, brief phone calls since the apartment incident meant she was simply too hurt, too proud, too committed to the wedding logistics and family pressure to blow it all up before Saturday. She'd told him people don't cancel weddings a week out. She'd told him this could still be smoothed over quietly later, after the vows, after the money was spent, after it was too late to walk it back cleanly. She was wrong about a lot of things. That was the biggest one. Josie arrived at the rehearsal dinner in a deep green dress, hair done, smile easy, greeting Bennett's parents warmly, hugging Marcy, laughing with the wedding planner about seating charts. To everyone in that room, she looked like a woman one day away from the happiest moment of her life. She sat through the salad course. She sat through the first toast, delivered by Bennett's best man, full of jokes about how long it took him to work up the courage to propose. She sat through her own mother, Loretta, standing up with a glass of wine, tearful, saying how proud she was to watch her daughter marry a man who'd loved her so steadily for 4 years. Josie clapped along with everyone else. Then she stood up. I'd like to say something too, she said, and the room settled into the easy, expectant quiet of people waiting for a bride's sentimental toast. She held her phone in one hand. 4 years ago, Bennett told me he loved how steady I made him feel, she started, voice warm, easy, the room leaning in. And for a long time, I believed I was the steady one in this relationship, the reliable one. Turns out, while I was overseas for 6 months building us a life, someone decided steady was boring and swapped me out for a more exciting model. The warmth in the room curdled fast. Bennett's face went white at the head table. Vanna, seated 2 chairs down, invited, of course, as the maid of honor, went very still. For those who don't know, Josie continued, voice level, my sister and I are identical twins. Some of you have mixed us up before at Christmas, at birthdays. It happens, it's fine, we laugh about it. What's less fine is when one twin buys a burner phone the week the other one leaves for a work contract and spends 6 months impersonating her to her own fiancé. Gasps. A chair scraped somewhere. Bennett's mother's hand flew to her mouth. I have the messages, Josie said, holding up her phone. Sent from a number registered to a prepaid account, purchased in cash 4 days after I left for Singapore. I have a video call log showing my sister answering a call meant for me from Bennett's apartment. At a time, I have text records proving I was asleep on the other side of the world. And I have this. She pressed play. Vanna's voice, tinny but unmistakable, filled the private dining room. He fell for me, not the idea of you. Me. Then Bennett's voice, thin and guilty. I swear I didn't know at first. And Josie's own voice cutting through both of them. And when you found out it wasn't, because you knew, Ben. You knew for at least 6 weeks. The recording kept playing, ugly and clear, into a room full of people holding wine glasses they'd forgotten they were holding. Nobody moved. Bennett's father stared at his son like he didn't recognize him. Loretta had gone rigid, staring at her other daughter with an expression Josie had never seen on her mother's face before. Not anger yet, just a kind of collapsing disbelief. Turn it off, Bennett said, standing up so fast his chair nearly went over. Josie, please, turn it off. I'm done being quiet for you, Josie said. I was quiet for 6 months while you two decided I was a placeholder. I think everyone in this room deserves to hear the whole 11 minutes, actually, but I'll spare you. Here's the short version. She looked at Vanna, who hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, her face gone the particular shade of pale that comes right before someone realizes there's no version of this they can talk their way out of. My sister bought a second phone to text my fiancé while I was working overseas to pay for this wedding. She answered a video call pretending to be me, and he let himself believe it because it was easier than admitting he already knew something was wrong. Somewhere in the last 3 months, pretending turned into an actual affair, and somewhere after that, she started angling to be the one walking down the aisle Saturday instead of me. I have screenshots confirming all of it, time-stamped, and I've already sent copies to my mother, to Marcy, and to 3 people in this room who I trust to keep them safe in case anyone wants to pretend tomorrow that this didn't happen. She set her phone down on the table gently, like she was done with it. So, there's not going to be a wedding Saturday. I'm not walking down any aisle toward a man who let my own sister replace me for half a year and called it coping. And you... She turned, finally, fully to face her twin. I hope it was worth it, because you didn't win him. You won a man who's willing to lie to a woman's face for 6 months. That's not a prize. That's a warning label. The room stayed dead silent for a long moment. Then Bennett's father stood up, threw his napkin on the table, and said, "We're leaving," to his wife, in a voice that made it clear this wasn't a discussion. Marcy didn't move at first, just looked at her brother with an expression somewhere between disgust and grief before finally following her parents out. Loretta didn't leave. She walked straight to Josie, ignoring her other daughter entirely, and wrapped her in a hug so tight it nearly knocked the air out of her. "I am so sorry," her mother said into her hair. "I am so sorry." Vanna finally found her voice, thin and cracking. "Josie, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just... Save it," Josie said, not unkindly, "just done. You had 6 months to stop. You didn't. That's the only part that matters now." Bennett tried one more time, standing there in the wreckage of the dinner that his family had paid a deposit on, his voice small. "Can we at least talk about this somewhere private?" "We are talking about it," Josie said. "Privately would have meant you telling me the truth in month 3. This is what happens instead." She picked up her clutch, nodded once to Farron across the room, who'd been sitting quietly the whole time, ready in case Josie needed backup that never came, and walked out of the restaurant into the cool evening air, alone for the first time in 4 years, feeling something that surprised her more than the anger had. Relief. The wedding venue got a cancellation call the next morning. Josie ate the deposit losses without blinking, because some costs are worth paying to stop throwing good money after a bad marriage. Bennett moved out of the apartment within the month. Marcy told Josie later their parents hadn't spoken to him the same way since. Vanna tried calling for weeks. Josie let most of them go to voicemail. The ones she did answer, she kept short. Not cruel, just finished, the way you close a door on a room you don't need anymore. 6 months after that, Josie renewed her contract in Singapore for another year, took the promotion that came with it, and used part of what would have been wedding money to put a down payment on a small apartment of her own, the first thing she'd ever bought outright with nobody else's name on the lease. She still keeps the recording, saved in 3 places. Not for revenge. Just as a reminder that she trusted her instincts when it counted, and that trusting them cost her a fiancé and a sister on the same night, and she'd make that trade again in a heartbeat. If you were sitting at that rehearsal dinner table, what would you have done in Josie's shoes? Let me know in the comments, and if you want more stories like this one, hit subscribe because this channel's full of them.